The situation in the world has not been as tense as it is today since World War II. Unfortunately, we can state the fact that the world is one step away from a third world nuclear war. The most terrifying thing that could happen in this conflict is a nuclear strike exchange between the US and Russia. If this, God forbid, happens, let's understand how well the US are protected from Russian nuclear missiles, and not just Russian. I have thoroughly researched this topic and will tell you in this video how the American missile defense systems work. Is it possible to intercept all of the enemy's missiles? Will a nuclear warhead detonate if it is shot down over a city? And what tricks have the Russians come up with to make their missiles nearly impossible to shoot down? Before the most interesting part, please subscribe to my channel and like this video. Thank you. Before we examine the real chances of the US defending themselves against a nuclear strike, I want to say one important thing. The fact is that when the US and the USSR created their huge nuclear arsenals, the main idea was not to use these weapons of mass destruction, but to deter each other. Therefore, missile defense systems were less advanced than the weapons themselves, and this situation has essentially persisted until today. This means that defense against a massive nuclear strike, unfortunately, remains a rather theoretical phenomenon. But let's still understand what chances the US have to protect their population from such an attack. I won't talk about how nuclear weapons work. You've probably already heard a lot about the principle of operation. I made a video about it on my channel. We know well that it is a super powerful weapon that can completely destroy entire cities and even countries. Let's focus more on how realistic it is to shoot it down so that it doesn't reach its destination and causes great damage. The first thing we need to understand is that there are two types of nuclear weapons: tactical and strategic, and the approaches to intercepting each of them are different. Let's start with tactical. This is a weapon with a yield of up to 100 kilotons, and it is intended for strikes at a fairly short range, about 1,000 miles. Strategic weapons, on the other hand, can have a yield of hundreds of kilotons or even more, and can be used against targets at a range of up to 10,000 miles. Let's understand the difference in power between a strategic and tactical warhead. The nuclear bomb dropped on Hiroshima had a yield of 15 kilotons. It was tactical. And the largest nuclear bomb ever detonated in history, called the Tsar Bomba, dropped by the Soviet Union in 1961 as part of a test, had a yield of 58 megatons. Therefore, it was strategic. Here is the difference in the size of the mushroom clouds from these two bomb explosions. For a better understanding of the consequences, let's do our own experiment. Let's drop a nuclear warhead using a special site that shows the destruction zone after a nuclear explosion. Let's take Los Angeles and hit it first with a tactical 50 kiloton warhead, and then with a strategic 5,000 kiloton warhead, which is equivalent to 5 megatons. The link to the website will be in the description below. Let's start with the tactical one. We see that only a few blocks will be completely destroyed by such a missile. And now, let's use the strategic one. We see that practically nothing will be left of Los Angeles. We have understood the consequences. Now, let's look at the types of carriers that can deliver such warheads. They are very different, which entails different defense approaches. A tactical nuclear missile can be launched from an aircraft or submarine. Of course, you can also drop a conventional bomb, as was the case with Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But to do this, the plane has to fly into US territory, and nowadays this is practically impossible. The aircraft will be shot down even before approaching the US borders, since it is a large, slow target. So we won't talk about such bombs today, we'll focus specifically on missiles. Let's consider the situation that the enemy decided to attack US territory with a tactical nuclear missile from an aircraft. It needs to fly as close as possible, at least a few thousand miles away, and launch missiles from there. This will not be easy for the attacking side, as the approach of the bomber will be noticeable on radars, and most likely US fighters will take off immediately towards it. But let's imagine a scenario where the plane managed to launch missiles. For such an attack, the Russians have two types of missiles: cruise missiles or the Kinzhal aeroballistic hypersonic missile. They have been using these missiles, but without nuclear warheads, to strike Ukraine. Practical experience has shown that the American Patriot missile defense system shoots down all types of missiles without major problems. Therefore, this will not be a big threat. Most likely, most of the missiles will be shot down. But you might ask, what if a nuclear missile is shot down over a city? Will there be a devastating nuclear explosion? The answer is a definite no. There will be no nuclear explosion. Because for a nuclear explosion to occur, a certain process inside the warhead must take place. The worst that will happen in such a case is minor nuclear contamination at the site where the debris falls. This is bad, but compared to an explosion, it's only child's play. The next attack option is a tactical nuclear strike from a submarine. This is a bit more complicated because detecting a submarine underwater is virtually impossible, which means that the missile launch will be quite unexpected. The missile will become noticeable on radars only as it approaches its target. There will be from 2 to 30 minutes to shoot it down, depending on the launch distance and type of missile. But here, as in the previous scenario, missile defense should handle these missiles without problems. We can conclude that an attack on the US with tactical nuclear missiles does not pose a great danger, either to the population or to strategic targets. Usually, such weapons were developed for use against neighboring countries, or at least on the same continent. Therefore, this weapon can be used by Russia against Europe or North Korea against South Korea. Now let's move on to strategic nuclear weapons. I'll say in advance, here everything is much more dangerous and pessimistic, but let's figure it out. There are 3 options for carriers of such warheads. The first is stationary silos in which missiles are located. The location of these silos is known to the US military, although this will not make it easier if a missile has already been launched from such a silo. The second type is missiles that can be launched from submarines that have crept up to US shores. And the third is from ground-based mobile launchers. Let's consider a scenario where a ballistic missile has been launched from a silo. It will have 3 stages of flight: boost phase, mid-course phase, and terminal phase. It is best to shoot down such a missile during the boost phase, since at this stage, the huge rocket booster is still present. Therefore, it is much easier to hit such an object than a small warhead flying in space. But there is a certain problem here. The boost phase of a missile lasts only about 240 seconds, about 4 minutes. It takes approximately 70 seconds to detect the launch. Then it takes time for the command to make the decision to launch the interceptor. Let's say another 60 seconds. The remaining 110 seconds for the actual interception. As you understand, this is very little time for the interceptor to reach the ballistic missile. For this, a weapon that would move at the speed of light was invented. A powerful laser was invented that was supposed to destroy the booster in a matter of seconds. The goal of the YAL-1 system was to shoot down intercontinental ballistic missiles during their boost phase. The laser was installed on a Boeing 747 aircraft from which it was supposed to be used. However, the laser proved ineffective because the atmosphere dissipated its energy more than expected. The effective range was only a few tens of miles, which meant that the aircraft would have had to fly in the enemy's airspace. As a result, the program was canceled. Another way is to shoot it down with an interceptor, but there are also problems here. The main one is distance. For the interceptor to effectively shoot down a missile, it needs to be deployed as close as possible to the launch site. It is claimed that this distance should be from 30 to 600 miles. Therefore, the interceptor can be effective if the missile is launched from a submarine near the US borders or from North Korea. But from the depths of Russia or China, it will not be possible to shoot it down at this stage. The conclusion is that the American missile defense will not be able to shoot down an intercontinental ballistic missile during the boost phase if it is launched from the enemy's deep rear. However, new technologies are currently being developed with a focus on unmanned aerial vehicles. Now let's consider the possibility of shooting it down at the next stage, the mid-course phase. The main advantage here is the longest time interval, which is about 20 minutes. There is plenty of time, but the main challenge will be to hit the small warhead that is already separated from the booster and is traveling at 15,000 miles an hour. Such an interception is compared to hitting a bullet with another bullet. The Americans have 2 ways in their arsenal to shoot down missiles in the mid-course phase, using a ground-based interceptor or standard missiles that can be launched from ships. The Raytheon EKV ground-based interceptor is a multi-stage solid fuel accelerator with an exo-atmospheric kill vehicle, or EKV. It is part of the U.S. ground-based mid-course defense program against ballistic missiles, costing about $40 billion. Each ground-based interceptor requires its own silo, and all 44 interceptors belonging to the United States are currently located at Vandenberg Air Force Base in California and Fort Greely in Alaska. Each interceptor costs $75 million. In addition to ground-based interceptors, another way to destroy a ballistic missile is to use the Aegis Ballistic Missile Defense System, a naval multi-mission missile defense system. The main interceptor missile of this system is the SM-3, which is launched from the Mark 41 vertical launch systems. The launchers are located on various types of U.S. Navy ships, as well as on land. The interceptor delivers a kill vehicle into space, where it maneuvers to intercept the incoming warhead. The biggest problem for the SM-3 interceptors is range. Therefore, the carrier ship must be located close enough to intercept the ICBM. Therefore, the ship-based defense system is more suited to intercepting intermediate-range intercontinental missiles flying a distance of about 3,000 miles. Ground-based interceptors handle long-range missiles better. We see that the US have sufficient forces to shoot down ballistic missiles, but there is one caveat here: decoys. Yes, you heard right. Russian missiles can use decoys to confuse missile defense. For example, during the mid-course phase, the Russian R-36 Satan missile can release approximately 50 nuclear warheads. But in reality, only 10 of them are real warheads, the other 40 are decoys. Suddenly, one ICBM has turned into 50 different moving targets, 10 of which need to be intercepted. Defense systems must have a way to distinguish decoys from lethal targets so that precious interceptors are not wasted on decoys. Therefore, the Americans have created radars that can distinguish a lethal warhead from a decoy. One such radar was built in Alaska for a whopping $784 million. Knowing all this, how many intercontinental ballistic missiles do you think the US can realistically intercept using its entire stock of 44 ground-based interceptors, just to demonstrate the complexity of each intercontinental ballistic missile that has multiple warheads and decoys? Let's consider this scenario. One R-36 Satan intercontinental ballistic missile can carry 10 warheads and 40 decoys. Now, if we assume that the discrimination radars can correctly identify all 10 lethal warheads, one might think that the 44 ground-based interceptors could successfully neutralize at least 4 ICBMs, each with 10 warheads. But it's not quite that simple. Each ground-based interceptor has only a 56% chance of actually intercepting one target. To increase the probability of intercepting one target to 96%, it would take not 2 or 3, but 4 interceptors. This means that a single ICBM with 10 deployed warheads could easily overcome all of the United States ground-based interceptors and potentially detonate on American soil. And that's why the US missile defense system relies on multiple layers of defense. One defensive line will only be able to destroy a portion of the threats, but a combination of several defensive lines, the last of which is the terminal phase, could destroy most, if not all, warheads. The terminal phase begins when the nuclear warhead re-enters the atmosphere. This phase is very short, lasting only about a minute, and it is the last opportunity to intercept before the warhead reaches its target. The US missile defense system can intercept warheads in the terminal phase using the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense (THAAD) system, or the Patriot system I mentioned earlier. But the thing is, these systems are designed to destroy targets moving at speeds of up to 8 Mach. Therefore, they can hit short and medium-range ballistic missiles. Since the speed of an intercontinental ballistic missile is 24 Mach, no one knows if it can be intercepted by these means. The point is that shooting down something like an intercontinental ballistic missile, although possible, is extremely difficult, and we haven't even mentioned maneuvering re-entry vehicles or hypersonic glide vehicles that could overwhelm defense systems. And we are certainly not talking about a massive nuclear strike when hundreds of nuclear warheads could be used. In a recent 2022 study, it was argued that no system developed so far has proven effective against realistic threats from intercontinental ballistic missiles, even from North Korea. But the Pentagon disagrees with this. They are confident in their capabilities and claim that outside studies are based on outdated and inaccurate data due to classification restrictions. Who to believe and how it will actually be is unknown, but I hope we never find out. Thank you for watching, and may the skies be peaceful above us.